Is this what Israel's been waiting for?
Look, I think Benjamin Netanyahu has been looking for an opportunity to, as he said, remake the balance of power in the Middle East. And if he could use this particular conflict, this opportunity to do it, he's got wind in his sails. They were ready to take out Hezbollah in a way that they were not ready to take out Hamas. Huge public support for his actions, certainly in Lebanon. But once you start to move against Iran in this very direct and explicit way, yes, I think he is raising the stakes. It's very hard to know whether he plans it, therefore, definitely, or this is maneuvering to try to get U.S. support for a different type of attack, which would be against maybe some of Iran's energy infrastructure. Certainly my standing point on this is if you were to try to attack Iran's nuclear capabilities, they would have to do this without U.S. support. President Biden's been very clear to say he would not back them on this. So that would be incredibly high risk for the pilots. It's a very long distance to get to Iran, over 1,000 kilometers. That would be a big, big gamble. So clearly they're thinking about it. It would certainly be the way, as you said, of tackling the octopus. I don't think it would cut his head off, by the way, not least because there's a lot of popular support in Iran for its nuclear program, even if there isn't for the regime.
Do you think that the warnings that have come from Sir Alex Younger, Sir Richard Dearlove, both former heads of MI6, and also Leon Panetta from the CIA, that this potentially could accelerate Iran's charge towards its own nuclear program, is in order, or was that going to happen anyway?
I don't think it was going to happen in any way. I think Iran has enjoyed, if I can put it that way, being a sort of pre-nuclear state, having the capacity to escalate to actually being nuclear power if it needed to, but would prefer to keep the ambiguity and not make the move. Obviously, if it were attacked, it would need to show some type of response that was long-term and would dissuade a similar type of attack from happening in the future. One way of doing that would be to go ahead and try to undertake the program. But if they did try to undertake a program or made it public, then that would draw the United States in, because the United States has been very clear they would get involved to prevent Iran from being a nuclear power. So that would be a very high-stakes gamble by the Iranian regime should they do it.
You mentioned the US, and it's very interesting that people are keeping an eye on the oil price, one eye on the oil price, which has now risen to $78 a barrel, up 9% since last Friday, in an election year. How worried do you think that the US administration is about this actually escalating further and leading to a wider regional conflict?
No, I think they're deeply worried. Because they've been able to do nothing at all so far to dissuade Benjamin Netanyahu from taking a maximalist policy against the various threats that exist towards Israel right now, and using this moment to actually, as I said earlier, redraw the balance of power across the Middle East. So this is a moment of ultimate action. So the question is, the United States, I'm afraid, has very little direct leverage, except over the question of whether they undertake a military attack on the nuclear program. That's one area where it would be incredibly difficult for the Israelis to move forward without U.S. support. But short of that, in a way, right now, Benjamin Netanyahu has the country behind him to be able to take the kind of steps that he wants to undertake without worrying too much about domestic political opposition, which, of course, was a big concern before.
How different do you think the Iranian attack in the last couple of days was when 181 highly penetratable missiles were fired at Israel? It was very different to the attack back in April, wasn't it? And was it not then to be expected by the Iranians that Israel would have to be seen to up the ante?
Absolutely. They've been in a dance. The two countries so far have been in a dance, each to demonstrate intent and dissuasive and deterrent capability. The attack that took place by using only missiles meant the Israelis had roughly 12 minutes, and their American CENTCOM, which supports Israel in defending itself against these missile attacks. They only had 12 minutes to be able to act. They were targeted mostly at air bases, but some of the missiles were also targeted at the Mossad base. It was a much more dramatic attack in the sense that it only used ballistic missiles, which I said are much more threatening and much more devastating than the drones, which made up roughly half the package last time. But still, these were not targeted at population centers. These were still an attempt to try to find an escalation that was short of triggering a further escalation by Israel. So the problem is, Benjamin Netanyahu is in a dance that is very, very hard to be able to calculate. I still think in the end he cannot afford to lose U.S. support, and therefore he'll have to be very cautious about going the next level, despite the scale of the Iranian attack.
He's talked quite openly and made an appeal in a televised statement that when Iran is finally free, and that moment will come a lot sooner than people think, everything will be different. This has been Netanyahu in a televised address. I mean, how realistic do you think two things, Sir Robin? One, a wider regional conflagration here. Do you think that's overblown? Because Iran doesn't want an escalation here, even though it has to be seen to respond. And two, do you think any talk of regime change is completely futile, pie-in-the-sky nonsense?
Well, I think you're not going to achieve regime change through military action against Iran, and certainly not if that regime change attempt is undertaken by Israel. If there's anything designed to drive the people of Iran towards the current government, the mullah, the regime, that would be it. So it would be, in my opinion, highly counterproductive in the near term. So that sounds to me more like, threats over to Iran and to make the Iranian regime truly feel a threat. However, the risk of regional escalation, your core question to your listeners today, I do think is obviously much higher right now, because the problem with sort of tit-for-tat attacks is that each time, no tit-for-tat attack is going to be less powerful than the one before. Yeah. And the one option that the Iranian regime has in the end to be able to really cause pain to the United States and force others to bring pressure on Israel would be some type of effort to prevent the flow of oil and gas out of the Straits of Hormuz, yes. From which 25% of the world's oil and gas supplies emerge, including critically the LNG, the liquefied natural gas, that we in Europe now rely on so much now that we can't get as much of our gas through pipelines from Russia. So that would be a big impact, and a big impact ahead of the U.S. election. I mean, it could really, a tip on the price of oil in that last critical month ahead of the U.S. elections on 5th of November could be quite dramatic. So there's so many pieces at play here. But we know that the Iranians have in the past attacked and taken out Saudi refining and oil installation capacity. They've struck a couple of times United Arab Emirates tankers. So they certainly have the capacity to escalate in this direction and try to say the rest of the world, you've got to come in and restrain Netanyahu. Of course, Netanyahu then will say, okay, what's the price that I'm going? What's the prize I'll get for restraining myself? And you'll look for some type of alternative outcome.
Thank you very much indeed, Sir Robin. That was Sir Robin Niblett, former director and chief executive of Chatham House, who is now one of its distinguished fellows. Let me give you my thoughts on all of this. Do I think this will lead to a wider regional conflict? No, I don't. I think that is overblown, and I think it's been talked about for months now. We're already in a wider regional conflict, if you like, because not only have Israel been engaging with Hamas in the south of their country, they have also been engaging with Hezbollah in the north, clearly to get back their citizens into northern towns that have been pummeled by Hezbollah rockets. And they've also been engaging with the Houthis and even firing rockets into Syria and Yemen as well. So is a regional conflict escalation possible? It's already happened. So is it going to get any worse than this? I'm not sure. I do think that when you get into a direct conflagration with Iran, we don't know where that will lead. And that is dangerous, clearly dangerous. And it's dangerous for two reasons. One, you can see the intensity of the Iranian response already has increased since they fired those 300 drones, which basically they gave warnings before they were even let off to head towards Israel, which effectively was just a face-saving mechanism after one of their key generals was killed in an overseas territory. But now what they launched just a couple of days ago was much more fierce. Clearly, the Israel defense systems are up to the job of dealing with the majority of these rockets. But clearly, if Israel rather retaliates in some way and tries to take out Iran's nuclear capability, then all bets are off. So do I think it's going to go into a broader regional conflict? No. But I do think that if there's an escalation with Iran, then what you're looking at here, and by the way, I do think Netanyahu does want this, and he's been wanting it for a long time, and this probably gives him a perfect excuse to do so, as Robin Niblett was hinting at there. But I do think that the US and the West in general is going to be very, very, very concerned about the oil price, particularly in an election year with an election just over a month away. $78 a barrel today. Where that could head if this all kicks off directly between Iran and Israel, which have been acting through proxies, who on earth knows?